What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the NCAA Tournament Round 1 betting preview, Part 1. We're going to cover the South and the West today. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today to preview those regions, first up, Mr. Jim Root. We're going to go through the entire South. We're going to go through every game, some a couple seconds, some a little more in depth, and then we'll talk about who we see coming through to help out with your bracket and potential futures. And then later in the show, BJ Cunningham will join me and we'll talk some West. So Jim, we're recording this on Tuesday night, so we won't have every game, right? It's before the Rutgers Notre Dame playing. But how are you doing overall? And are you looking out your window at night, seeing if Santa's on his way?
Oh yeah. I am. My brain is close to mush right now, just having written and talked about these games, but I'm going to bring it. I got it for this one more pod here, Stuckey. We're going to hammer these out. I love the South region. I'm a big fan of a lot of the teams in it. So it makes for a lot of fun matchups to discuss, some potential matchups down the line. I think it's my favorite region. So I'm glad it's the one that I have got to preview with you here. It's going to be a good one.
Well, you did get first choice because you did the initial bracket reaction for me on Sunday night. I appreciate you for that. And yeah, I will bring it as well. Got a couple more hours after this. And I know you've had three-man weed stuff. So it's just, the good thing is it's like when I'm not doing any of this stuff, I'm just staring at lines and looking at these matchups. So it's also nice to kind of push the time along. Just get me to 12:07 on Thursday. Not 11, because that hour between 11 and 12, when all the lines are bouncing all over the place and late movement, that hour it feels like it's like 3. But I digress. Let's get into it. The South region, Arizona is the number 1 overall seed in this region. The 2 seed, Villanova Wildcats, have obviously had a lot of tournament success under Jay Wright. The 3 is Tennessee. Could have argued they should have been a 2 after winning the SEC tournament. Illinois is the 4. There's some, and then Houston's the 5. It's a pretty loaded field at the top. You're not like, all right, well, here's a pretty weak 3 or a pretty weak 2. I know you're a big fan of Arizona. They don't seem to have any real inherent weaknesses. We'll start broad. Are they coming out of here? Who's a threat to them? Does Krisa's injury matter much to you? What say you on we'll start at the top, I think, to the top region, Arizona through Chattanooga. Do they come through to the Elite 8? And if not, who can potentially pick them off?
Yeah, I have Arizona getting through there, but I don't think it's any walk in the park for them. The Krisa injury changes how they have to play a little bit. I think they don't get the same kind of swagger from him, the same shot making from the point guard spot. Justin Kier is solid. Pelle Larsson and Dalen Terry have some playmaking chops, but they're not true point guards. And I just Kriisa brings something intangible to that team. So they lacking that is a little bit tough, but I was impressed with them against.
He can also kind of implode though, right? Like work against them in a way.
I believe he was 0 for 14 on the road at UCLA, maybe 0 for 12. Like he did not hit a single field goal in that game and they lost. But I find the 5 and the 4 very strong here. Obviously, analytical rankings love Houston. Illinois, I think, has a lot of the pieces necessary to make a run with a great big man, some great guards. I like the lower seeded teams. UAB and Chattanooga were ones I was targeting before the reveal. So I actually find this region to be quite loaded. Basically, if you took anybody 1 through 5 from the South and swapped them with their counterpart in the Midwest, I would take that team to make the Final Four in the Midwest. Like if you put Houston as the 5 down there, Final Four for me. If you put Illinois, Tennessee, Villanova down there, I would take them. So I find this region very difficult to predict because there are a lot of strong teams, but Arizona still is the one I am sticking by.
Yeah, I wish UAB, could UAB or Chattanooga, could they have gotten any other 4 or 5 seeds? We're going to talk about those games briefly. We'll skip over Arizona, winner of Wright State and Bryant. If Arizona plays Bryant, by the way, I don't think Bryant knows how to play any other way and Wright State plays fast too, but Bryant's just a speed racer, going to try to press. And so that, I think Bryant earlier this year lost 111-44 to Houston. That one could get out of hand.
Arizona by 40 plus. I genuinely think that is just a complete shellacking.
Yeah. Yeah. And Arizona has this, like, say, if you project the chalk going through and it's Illinois, Arizona has the size inside to deal with Coburn for sure. All right. So let's just move down. Seton Hall, TCU. That's a brawl, a men's game, just two teams that are going to try to live on the glass. I have TCU advancing there. I like them a little bit. I'm going to bet them, not a huge bet, because I think it's just going to be a grinder. So I don't think any team's really going to pull away from the other. I think Miles is the difference. The backcourt injuries from Hall catch up to them. I think it'll be nice for TCU to get out of the Big 12 as well. It's a team that doesn't really shoot a lot of threes, doesn't shoot them well. Playing in that conference with all the no middle teams is not great. I'm watching Oklahoma, Missouri State now, which looks like it's going to be first to 100. Oklahoma looks like they were extremely pleased to get out of the Big 12. Any thoughts on Seton Hall, TCU?
Well, that spooks me for my strongest lean here, which would be the under. I do think it's going to be a brawl, like you said. But yeah, I think both teams are so strong defensively, especially at the rim. Seton Hall's incredible at the rim. Their defense when Obiagu is on the floor is lights out inside. But the TCU offensive rebounding edge is big to me. They're number 1 in the country in rebound rate on the offensive end. I'm surprised they were ahead of Houston. And then Seton Hall's kind of dicey on the defensive glass, especially in a league in the Big East where I don't picture it as stacked with monster offensive rebounds. So I think TCU has a big edge there. And like you said, Miles, best playmaker on the floor, best creator in the backcourt with Bryce Aiken out for Seton Hall. So yep, I'm leaning TCU and the under.
Let's move on to the 5-12, Houston UAB. UAB, of course, has one of the most electric players in the field in Jelly Walker. If you haven't seen him play, he's capable of going for 40 any given night. So if he's hitting just 3 after 3, UAB can certainly win this game. But Houston's not the best matchup for them. However, digging into this matchup, curious to get your thoughts on this. UAB will press and they will pressure. And I think they're one of the 5 heaviest press teams in the field. They'll extend pressure. They want to play faster. Houston doesn't have a lot of depth, and they struggled in a couple matchups with Memphis's pressure. Is that an avenue for success for UAB, or does this game just basically come down to Walker needs to go nuts because Houston's going to grab most of the rebounds, and their length could give UAB some trouble? This game I keep going back and forth on, especially from a spread perspective. I think Houston's sitting right around an 8-point favorite. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth as well. I mean, I think these are both maybe the strongest, at least especially per metrics. These are the strongest teams at their particular seed line. Like if UAB was against any other 5 seed, they might be like a 2-point dog or something. But Houston is so well thought of in metrics that it's 8. I view these teams very similarly. Like I think they kind of have a hard hat, lunch pail identity. They get after it on the glass. Houston's just better at that identity. The pressure you mentioned, I think, is the route for UAB to compete, and it's going to take a while. They might have to wear them down over time. They only have Houston really only has like 2.5 ball handlers on the entire squad. So you wear down, you get into their legs. Maybe you make a run in the second half, and then Jelly's got to go bonkers. He's got to be pulling up from 30 as he does. Doesn't matter how much time's on the shot clock, he will fire away. But Houston's got length to throw at him. I think Tajay Moore's a great matchup to bother him with. So yeah, I'm leaning towards Houston. It's a fairly big number for 2 teams I respect, but I'm picking Houston to advance and lean to their way on the spread.
Illinois, Chattanooga, another game with the spread right in the same neighborhood as Houston, UAB. When this matchup first came out, I said, wow, the Chattanooga is they're a rare mid-major who has a piece inside in D'Souza, the former Kansas transfer. I'm sure that a lot of you are more casual basketball fans. You might remember him from, there was like a chair incident with against Kansas State, and it was just complete chaos. But he transferred to Chattanooga. He missed some time, but he's back now, healthy. They have some other sides too. I mean, you watch this game, Chattanooga. It's not going to be like, when last year, if you think of Colgate, Arkansas, you're like, wow, Colgate looks like it's kind of like the Jersey game. Like you're a small high school and you go out and play a really big high school that has 3 times the kids and like, man, this team looks so much better. It's not going to be like that. Chattanooga has high major athleticism. Malachi Smith's an incredible guard. He can get red hot. You got John Batiste, who's been there for their point guard. He's been there for, I don't know, 5-6 years, really experienced point running the show. But they have bodies to throw at Coburn. Can Chattanooga pull off this upset? Is there value with the dog here?
This one was weird for me. I'm curious where you ended up on the spread too. Chattanooga team I was looking to back coming in because I thought they had some giant killer formula with the size. They rebound the ball. They don't really turn it over. They have big time scorers in the backcourt. It's just weird matchup wise because you want to put Kofi Coburn in ball screens and move him around on the perimeter, make him play in space. That's how Loyola really took advantage of Illinois last year. And that's not in Chattanooga's normal DNA. They're more of like a off ball motion, some swing elements. Lamont Parrish, their coach, is coming over from Wisconsin. So I don't know if they, from a matchup sense, have the exact makeup to compete here. I just think they're good enough to, on a straight talent level, coaching level, to where 7.5 feels a little high to me. And I lean towards the Mocs on the spread.
Yeah, I would lean the Mocs as well. Their pick and roll defense is a bit of a concern for me on the perimeter. They don't grade out well, which could be problematic, but is, from a matchup perspective, like I think Malachi Smith can give his size and his shooting ability can give Illinois some issues. But then again, Illinois does a tremendous job of taking away the 3, which I think Chattanooga is going to need here. But yeah, it's not the exact DNA of a team that you would want to upset Illinois. So I think shots are going to have to fall for Chattanooga, and that's a strength of Illinois in their 3-point defense. But you're right. They want to feed the post. They want to swing it. So yeah, I keep going back and forth. I think the spread is a little high. So I might end up with, this is the time of year. Look, spreads are really efficient and they're getting more efficient. I remember, man, back in the day, the opening night, I'm sitting there like, wow, there's not a ton of games that are way off. Like you would have, some of these dogs now in 5-12 matchups, 4-13. They used to be mispriced, but now you have so many analytical sites out there. Ken Palm obviously started that bookmakers aren't caught with their pants down as much, and the line just keep getting more and more efficient. So I think a lot of times there's not going to be a ton of games where I'm like, this is a huge edge anymore. So a lot of times it comes down to matchups, which we're going to talk about. And then sometimes I'll throw a small bet in because I like a dog just for entertainment. It's that time of year. So I might end up throwing something small on Chattanooga just for some entertainment value. But I don't think the spread is wildly off.
Right. I would agree there. You can just kind of tell from the lack of movement from openers. Clearly the openers have been kind of sharp because you don't see ones going from 2 up to 5 or 15 down to 12. The openers were pretty good. And I was bummed because I was hoping to get ahead of some of the movement, but there's just not much of it out there.
Yep. Yeah. I got, what was the only game that I was able to get that was moved on? I got a tiny amount. I mean, you can't really get much down on these very initial openers on Georgia State plus 27. That was one that opened 23, went to 27 within a minute, and then down to 25, then down to 24. But yeah, not a lot of movements. You'll see them in totals, and a lot of times towards the under, but more so now than sides. But yeah, the market is certainly much more efficient, which means, and be ready for this, just be ready for variance and hope it's on your side. Because as lines get more efficient, that means 3-point variance, late foul, it's just going to come into play more often. So you got to hope the 3-point variance on your side, and free throws. You're going to have last 2 minutes. Fouls are up 20-25% in the tournament. So just be ready and know that you're going to take some bad beat lumps and just move on to the next and enjoy the tournament. All right. So I would agree. I have Arizona also coming out. I think that they have the easiest path. And then there's also, a chance for chaos. Jelly Walker gets hot, Chattanooga gets hot. So the 4 and 5, I think, are much more vulnerable. So it wouldn't shock me to see, a surprise Sweet 16 here, but I think Arizona is the class. No real weaknesses. I mean, if you're drawing up a team that you'd want to face Arizona, Is it a team that zones, that's going to use zone? Is it a team that is just going to ensure that they completely, just make sure the game crawls to a stop and is slow in the half court and they're going to control the pace? Is it like a Villanova, so I was trying to think of like, who is the team I would want if I was drawing up the ideal opponent, if I wanted to bet against Arizona? It doesn't have to be a specific team, but just stylistic wise, what would you kind of draw up there?
I think the tempo part's big. UCLA kept him in the half court. Tennessee kept him in the half court. I think those were, if they get in transition, they are so lethal because they're big, they're athletic, they're mobile. Even their big guys are really mobile. Tubelis is like shockingly mobile when you see him play. And then maybe a little bit of pressure. I've been concerned with their turnover issues in Pac-12 play. They're 10th in the league in turnover rate. And that not even always against teams with a ton of pressure. So like if UAB gets through there and they have Quan Jackson harassing Dalen Terry or Justin Kier with Kreisa still out, I could see them being a very feisty underdog because they could get some easy buckets off steals. But yeah, the half court thing I think is the biggest part. It's the same with Gonzaga. Like they're very similar. Don't let those teams run.
Would you zone them?
I would try. I think their ball movement is good enough to beat some zones. If you're just doing it because you want to try a zone, you haven't practiced it, you're probably not going to be good enough in rotation. But forcing them to shoot over the top, not letting them do the high-low stuff where Tubelis and Koloko can seal, I think you got to keep them out of that too.
Yep. The problem with you're trying to pick the 8-9 seed upset here, like if you're really confident seeing RTC against Arizona, like those teams want to live on the glass and like inside, and Arizona has a lot of size. It's hard to see either one of those teams outscoring Arizona. So I don't have that on my radar as an potential 8-9 upset. Would you agree?
Yeah, I didn't even consider it. Put Arizona right into the Sweet 16.
Okay, let's move on to the bottom half of the South region. From, if you're looking at your bracket, Colorado State on down to Delaware. Villanova is the 2 seed down here, the favorite to come out, but Tennessee would obviously be a formidable opponent if the chalk holds. High level, who do you have coming out of here, and why?
I waffled a lot. I went back and forth between the Vols and Villanova. And then I ended up just kind of looping back to the game that they played early in the season. Villanova pulled them apart, held them to 53 points, made Tennessee play in the half court, took away the 3-point line, or at least quality 3-point looks. And I know Tennessee is much better than they were then. I'm sure Vols fans would be screaming at me for that. They were young. They're playing a lot of young guards. Ziegler was not even in a big role then. He was playing 7 minutes in that game. So it's a different team, but I still think Villanova can frustrate them in the same way. Granted, there are possibilities for upsets, and we'll mention a couple here that I think are actually worth considering. But I do have chalk holding Villanova over Tennessee to get to the Elite Eight. Where'd you land on that?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, when Villanova, I was trying to think of how much stock I should put into that game earlier in the season when Villanova just dominated Tennessee. But a lot of times if you were thinking about that, I throw out a lot of those games between, high major top 20 teams that happen in early November. There's a lot of new pieces that teams change a lot. And I think at the time, Villanova was much more of a known commodity. That was when Tennessee had yet to figure out their offense, right? That was when I thought of Tennessee as, oh man, this is the same team, great defense, and they're going to go through extreme droughts, and that's going to be their downfall. They ended up making some changes offensively, and credit to Barnes. And now that's maybe their strength of their team is their perimeter on the offense. So they're completely different teams here. I was looking at, all right, who do I think has a better chance of getting upset between Villanova and Tennessee? And I'm just not I think Ohio State is fading. And if Loyola Chicago gets by, I mean, like Villanova's comfortable playing that game. Like one of the advantages of Loyola Chicago, and we'll get to them, is that they make you uncomfortable. But Nova is comfortable there. So I think there's more landmines, easy for you to say, than I think Tennessee has more landmines than Villanova. And I think maybe the difference in the Villanova versus Tennessee game, Colin Gillespie back downs against those smaller Tennessee guards. I think that might end up being the X factor. So I'll roll with Jay Wright coming through to the Elite Eight to face Arizona. Boring, I know. But we will have some of the other regions. I have a lot more upsets and lower seeds going through. But let's talk about some of these games. Colorado State, Michigan. Another game where I go back and forth on this one because I think both offenses have some legit advantages here. Hunter Dickinson, how can Colorado State contain him, right? Like that's a weakness of Colorado State, that they're not the biggest team. And how is Michigan going to handle covering David Roddy? Can Colorado State run, are they going to run a lot more pick and roll action at the top? I think Michigan can be a little susceptible to that. So I keep going back and forth. If I had to, as of right now, I'll take the points in Colorado State. And again, that I think will be competitive throughout. Is Dickinson just the X factor? When Michigan needs a bucket, they're going to get it. Could Diabate or some of the length on Michigan, can they contain Roddy? I'm sure they might try a couple different guys. And I don't think they're going to try to put Dickinson on him because Dickinson can't stay with him laterally at the top. So I'd be curious to see how Michigan decides to guard and then how Colorado State decides to guard. Like it's going to be like, what are these rotations going to look like? I think that's going to matter. Fascinating game. What do you say?
Yeah, I think Colorado State's best lineup in a vacuum, like not considering opponent here, is when they go David Roddy at the 5, Tanjay at the 4, and then 3 guards, and that they can really spread teams out that way, but it's super vulnerable inside. So Roddy would probably be banging with Dickinson in there, but then
you worry about foul trouble there if that happens too on Roddy. Then you're cooked.
Exactly. He's got to play straight up and not take fouls, but I have no idea how Michigan stops that lineup on the other end. Because if Roddy's pulling Dickinson away from the basket, or you put Dickinson on Tanjay or something like that, that's not going to work. Which is why I circle back to you. You said the offenses, I think they both have clear routes to points. I don't know exactly what tempo, where they'll land here, but I think the efficiency is enough to make me like the over 139.5 or so. So I'm leaning that way. And I'm same way with you with spread. I feels close to a coin flip. So if I had to take it, it'd be give me the points.
Yeah, depending on how Colorado State decides to play, if they go small ball, so it's like, are you sacrificing offense or defense? Depends on. I'm not sure what Medved's going to do. I think he's a great coach. But if they go small ball, I think this is over City. Like it's Dickinson. Dickinson will have an incredible advantage anyway. But if Roddy's on him, Roddy's going to be okay. I need to be on offense. Yeah, lay it up. Right, like that's layups for Michigan, and I think Colorado State will have plenty of opportunities to exploit.
Yeah, they'd have to double like crazy, like double and rotate every time Dickinson touches it, like on the touch, on the catch, send a second defender.
Yeah, it feels like there's just going to be a ton of open threes in that game, depending on the matchups. All right, let's move on to the winner of Colorado State, Michigan. Will take on the winner of Tennessee and Longwood. Tennessee fresh off an SEC tournament championship. And Longwood, there's been so many games. I feel like the last time Longwood played was a month ago. But they won that incredible Big South tournament. Really, like when I first looked at this matchup, I said, I think that it would. When I'm looking at a straight up upset, I don't think Longwood really has a chance because I think that Longwood's overseeded. It's a team that got really fortunate in a lot of close games. And then Tennessee, I think, is underseeded. Like you could argue that Tennessee's a 2. Longwood, for me, I think I have Georgia State power rated higher than Longwood. And Longwood's a 14 and Georgia State's a 16. So, but Longwood has shooters, and that's what you want to hang around in games like this when you're talking a mid-major versus a power conference team. They can shoot the 3, they get great shots, and they make shots, and they have big guards, and Tennessee has smaller guards. So I don't think that Longwood is going to have trouble getting shots off. Now, if the Tennessee voodoo from last week in the SEC tournament continues, Longwood's cooked. If everyone goes 1 of 30 from 3 against Tennessee, but maybe there's some regression the other way that's due for the Vols. So do you agree Tennessee's not at risk of an upset here, or do you think that Longwood could be feisty enough? And then do you think that Longwood's guards and 3-point shooting are enough to stay within this number? Because I tend to think that's the case.
Yep, I like the dog. As far as actually being live and potentially winning, that's maybe a bridge too far unless they're scalding like 60% from deep. But I do think, like you said, the power guards they have, that like all 3 of their guards look like linebackers. They're like 200, 220 pounds. Isaiah Wilkins played for 2 different ACC schools. Now he's on Longwood, shooting 47% from deep. They rebound well for their league. That might not translate against an SEC team, but I think they're super well coached. Griff Aldrich, and then Rick Barnes has really struggled in the tournament. Well documented against the spread. I think he's like 1-5 against the number since he got to Tennessee, and it dates back even further to his Texas days. So yeah, I'm Longwood plus 17 would be a bet for me here.
All right, let's move on to the bottom half of the South. Ohio State, the 7 seed. These 2 games will be in Pittsburgh. Ohio State, Loyola, Chicago, and Villanova, Delaware. Ohio State, Loyola, Chicago, I've spread right around a pick. I've gone back and forth on, but I think that I've settled on Loyola, Chicago. I mean, Ohio State's just trending in the wrong direction, whereas Loyola, Chicago got a little healthier and then really turned it on in the Valley tournament late. I think Williamson, who's one of the best defenders in the entire country, can lock up Branham. Liddell, I think they have enough bodies to throw at him. The Ohio State defense has major questions, especially with Branham. I mean, maybe they just need to be locked in here. Ohio State lost as I believe, a 2 seed last year after Holtman had a lot of success in the first round. I think Loyola Chicago is going to make this game uncomfortable, and they're going to get enough stops and have enough quality defenders to stop Ohio State, who's also not fully healthy, which I think really put me over the top here. Do you agree?
Yep, 100%. Key has an ankle issue. Kyle Young has a concussion. One or both might play, but I kind of think Young will be out. I think he'll be limited. And yeah, Loyola Williamson's the back-to-back defensive player of the year in the Valley. I mean, what a perfect defender to throw at Branham. And Marquise Kennedy came back for Loyola Chicago in the Missouri Valley tournament. Yeah, and it's just like he takes them to a different gear. Like the performances without him, they went 5-3 straight up, and then he came back and they won, not comfortably, but they won all 3 games by more than 1 possession in the Valley tournament. I think he just takes them to a different gear, and they're right now, the way Ohio State's playing, Loyola is the better team.
Villanova, Delaware. This is a good storyline game if you're like the announcer for this game. You have Martin Inglesby, the head coach of Delaware, playing his dad's alma mater, Villanova. This game's in Pittsburgh, as I mentioned. His dad was an absolute legend. Went to Cardinal O'Hara. My dad went to high school outside of Philly and then went to Villanova and was a great basketball player. Played in the NBA for a bit too. And then Dylan Painter, who is a Villanova transfer, going back to play his old team, who's now a center on Delaware. Delaware won't be, when I look at this matchup, like Delaware won't be overwhelmed athletically in this game. They are a team that, I think before the season, if you looked at this roster, you're like, all right, this team is going to have a shot to win the Colonial. And they struggled at times, but they really came on towards the end of the year. You saw flashes. And the main thing is that the development of Jair Davis down low. I mean, he has just played incredible, takes them to another level. Nova's tough though, and they're seasoned and they're a toothache to play. Maybe the size of Delaware could potentially give Villanova some issues. Can the Blue Hens hang in this game?
I'm torn. The spread feels about right to me. I mean, Villanova, because they play so slowly, they can be susceptible to upsets if they're cold. But then I think it's worth mentioning.
Because they shoot a lot of threes. They give up a ton of threes. They're top 25 in both 3-point
Yep.
3-pointers attempted and then 3-pointers allowed rate wise. The problem is they usually make all their threes and then other teams aren't making threes against them.
But speaking of not making threes against them, Delaware in their tournament run, the 3 games they won in the CAA, their opponent shot 19% from beyond the arc. So I think there's maybe some regression coming. Villanova also was poor in the Big East tournament final with their perimeter shooting. So I'm leaning to Nova, but Delaware does have some matchup edges like Davis. I think even though Samuels and Slater could be solid matchups for him, I think he'll get his. He's just been so good down the stretch. This one was a tough one for me. One of the toughest ones in the region.
Yep. Andrew Carr, by the way, has played well down the stretch too. So Delaware does have some size here. I think it'll come down to their guards. Like they need to make shots. Their guards are really hit or miss. But they're going to need like Jameer Nelson Jr., Ryan Allen, Asamoah. They're going to need to hit shots, I think, but feels right. I think given the tempo, I don't think Nova's really at risk of an upset here, but given the tempo, you have to pick this for like a pool. I'd lean Delaware. All right, so let's finish this up. I think you went with Villanova over Tennessee?
I did. After much deliberation. Yep.
And same. So Villanova, Arizona, matching up in the Elite Eight. Consensus there. Who wins?
I'm going Wildcats. I actually was.
Well, which ones?
Good point.
You're not going out on a limb there.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, you caught me. Arizona. I'm taking Arizona. The boys at Tucson. Saw them live a couple times this year. Was mega impressed. If Kriisa was healthy, I actually think they'd be my national title pick. But I'm souring enough that I think I'll probably have them come up just short. But I still think they will get to the Final Four. I believe in the bigs, the system that Tommy Lloyd's installed, and Matherin and Terry are great on the wing. So, yep, I'll go Arizona to the Final Four.
Yeah, I have Arizona in my Final Four as well, but thought about this one because, Nova's going to really slow this one down, really seasoned team. But I think that Arizona's overall talent gets it done. It's not there's so many ways that Arizona could beat you. I think Arizona advances on to the Final Four. Last question for you, Jim, if someone was looking for another team, so not to go chalk, and that is a way that, you're either right or you want to pick. I think a lot of times you want to pick one team that makes a deep run, maybe not to the Final Four, but that maybe not a lot of other people have. And that's how you can really differentiate yourself. If someone wanted to take that shot in the South, I think there's better regions to do it myself, and we'll talk about them on upcoming podcasts. But who would you target here as you got to take one team to make it to the Elite Eight that is a 5 or a 6 or above?
I'll go Loyola. I think they're capable of making the run. Mention Kennedy and just what he means to them. The tournament experience they have, like Lucas Williamson was on the Final Four team. Almost all these guys were on the Sweet 16 team last year. They can shoot it. I actually think Valentine's a really good defensive game planner, even though he is a super young coach. And Villanova, because they play so slow, they're prone to bad shooting nights themselves, are vulnerable to bad shooting nights and hot shooting nights for the opponent. So I think they could get to the Elite Eight from there. They have to beat Tennessee, but I also think that's doable. Loyola beat Tennessee back in 2016 on the run to the Final Four, or 2018, excuse me. So I'll go with the Ramblers as my sneaky pick.
Yeah, and that what you want to look for. I have an article out on xnote.com that looks at the 13 through 15 seeds and ranking their upset chances. And a lot of what I look for, you can apply this to betting, but mainly it's for bracket money line picks. High variance games is what you want for your dogs, and that comes down to like 3-pointers and then tempo. And that Loyola Chicago Villanova game will be a grinder. So that's low possessions, higher variance. It's a little different for Loyola Chicago if they were playing like Gonzaga or Arizona, where the possessions would be way up. I think that's a good target for an uncomfortable team to play in this field in a tournament setting with experience and a great preparation coach. All right, Jim, that'll do it for the South. We went a little chalky. We like potentially some dogs early, gave some upset potential. Thanks for joining me. I will see you on Big Bets on Campus Live every day this weekend, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Twitter. We'll tweet out the links. Go hunt some more winners, and good luck this weekend, brother.
Appreciate it. See you then.
Talk a little West. The West, we just talked the South. We're going to go on the other side of the bracket and talk the West. Gonzaga is the 1 seed here. But first, BJ, how goes it? Where's your excitement level at?
It's getting up there. I think usually for me, it hits by this second game on Tuesday. Usually, and obviously, we have a great matchup with Wyoming and Indiana. But I mean, I don't think there's a better feeling as either sports bettor, as a fan, of waking up on that Thursday morning and just having all the games ready to go. I mean, I tell you what, I cannot wait until Thursday morning for tip. It's going to be so much fun.
Christmas morning is so close.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's start off talking the West. Gonzaga's the 1 seed, Duke's the 2 seed, Texas Tech's the 3 seed, and then you're talking Arkansas the 4, UConn the 5. Gonzaga obviously the favorite here. High level, when you look at this region, you have Gonzaga coming out. If not, can anyone get them early, or do you think they're going to the Elite Eight and then someone else can pick them off? What do you have in your bracket? What are you looking for overall? Just give me your thoughts on this region.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts as well. I'm teetering right now. I really think Texas Tech has a great shot of upsetting Gonzaga in that Elite Eight. Number 1 defense in college basketball, really just doesn't allow anything at the rim, which Gonzaga really needs to get there, can play well in transition with them. So that is where I'm kind of looking. That would probably be my big upset to be a differentiator from a lot of other brackets out there. So Texas Tech in the Final Four. I mean, Duke is definitely getting upset, and I think very, very early here. And I think what's going to end up happening is Texas Tech is going to have a little bit of an easier path to the Elite Eight, and then it's going to be an amazing matchup against Gonzaga.
Yeah, I wanted to go Texas Tech. By the way, it's a good. You're right. If you look like strategically, if you're looking for a team, that's a higher seed to make a deep run to like the Final Four, I don't think a lot of people will have that. So you can get a huge advantage over the others in your bracket pool if that's the case. By the way, at Stuckey 2 on Twitter, have some information on a bracket pool that I'm running that you can check out. I ultimately went chalk. I went chalk in the 1 seeds in the West and the South, which is this episode. We're going to talk Midwest and East next. I did not go teaser there. I did not go with the 1 seeds in either the East or Midwest, but yeah, I came close. I don't believe in the Duke defense. It wouldn't shock me if, I'm not a believer in Michigan State. I just don't believe in the Duke defense. And this Coach K thing might just be a distraction for them, but the way that they closed the year, I mean, look, an offense like Davidson with their motion could give them a lot of trouble in the second round in Greenville. Texas Tech, I just don't buy their offense. I just don't think it's quite good enough to get to the Final Four and knock off Gonzaga. Gonzaga has a couple potential landmines. Say Memphis wins that game. Memphis, just the athleticism of Memphis. The game will be like up and down, and maybe that's not great going against Gonzaga. But man, Memphis certainly has the athletes. And since Imani Bates left the program, number 2 team in the country per Torvik. Team's playing extremely well. Arkansas, I think, could potentially give Gonzaga a game. So there's some landmines there. I ultimately think that Gonzaga prevails and goes to the Final Four, where they then lose. That's where I have them going as the peak. But let's I'm trying to think of my bracket. I haven't decided who I'm moving to the Elite Eight yet. Like, you have the variants of Alabama. Rutgers if Rutgers, their toughness, like going against Alabama, they could beat like Texas Tech in like a game in the 40s. And I think Duke and Michigan State, the 2 and 7 down there, are vulnerable. I still haven't decided on my Final Four, my Elite Eight team. And that's one of the reasons that I picked Gonzaga, just because I'm not that confident in the Elite Eight, the team that comes out for the Elite Eight. That's one of the reasons I went with the Zags. All right, but let's go through game by game here. Gonzaga, Georgia State. I actually really like Georgia State here. I think that they are really underseeded. I mean, just from a power ratings perspective, they had a lot of injuries early on. They had really bad shooting luck going against them on both sides. They had some COVID issues. I thought they're going to be a 14 seed. Like Longwood's a 14 seed. I have Georgia State power rated higher than them. And so, I mean, I think that they both got shafted here. Like Gonzaga having to play maybe the best 16 ever power ratings wise. And then Georgia State having to play Gonzaga. Really not fair to either team. But Georgia State can defend the rim well, which is important here. Their guards, I think, can create a little bit of havoc and pressure that could maybe give Gonzaga a little bit of trouble here and there. And I think that their guards can attack Gonzaga. Huge spread here in the game that's like more like a 1 versus a 14 than a 16. Georgia State, I think, is fully capable with their guards of their senior laden backward of getting a backdoor if needed. So Gonzaga clearly going to advance. But I think the spread's a bit too high.
I totally agree with you. I'm with you on Georgia State. You hit the nail on the head. They're an incredibly underrated team. I mean, even if you look at shot quality, how drastically they underperformed this season, they should have gone undefeated in the Sun Belt. They won every single game on shot quality, but had a ton of bad luck throughout the stretch. There are a couple things that, Georgia State's not a great offensive team, but they do run a ton of pick and roll, and they're pretty effective in doing so. And that's one area that Gonzaga has somewhat struggled in this year. And, Gonzaga obviously loves to push the pace, but, Georgia State is, per shot quality, third best team in the nation in transition defense. So it's really not that great of a matchup for Gonzaga in the first round. I'd actually be pretty pissed if I was Mark Few. I was like, why couldn't I get, Texas Southern or Corpus Christi? Norfolk State.
Yeah.
Like, and now we get a team that should have been at the very least a 15 seed. So Georgia State, I mean, they're not live on the money line, but 23.5 is pretty big for a team that's, this good, has great, like you said, has great guard play and can defend the rim really well. So right there with you, love Georgia State against Gonzaga.
Yeah, Georgia State would be a 16 seed that has a chance to win a game if it was like a lower possession game. Like say that Virginia, like old Virginia, when they lost to UMBC, their variance was so much higher in their games because they played so. But Gonzaga plays so fast that it's just it's hard to see Georgia State. Like Georgia State just had to get hot, for maybe 10, 12 minutes in the game. Then all of a sudden it's going to be close throughout against Virginia. A little different against Gonzaga. They'll go on a couple runs, but I think it's too many points here. Let's move on to the 8-9 game. Talked about Memphis, surging Memphis. Just a dumpster fire earlier on in the season, but really figured it out down the stretch and surged up until that AAC final. Really athletic team, can pressure you. Point guard play, questionable times, but so is Boise State's. I think this game sets up. Well, I'll get your thoughts first. I'll let you lead off here. What are your thoughts on Boise State, Memphis? Memphis, 2.5 point favorite over under, sitting right around 133.
Yeah, ultimately, how hot Memphis has been there. My guess is they'll probably get through here, but looking at from a market perspective, I think given how good Memphis has been over the second half of the season, I think when we get towards Wednesday and Thursday, I think we'll see a ton of Memphis money just hit the market. So you might actually be able to get a better number on Boise State. And listen, Boise State, I think, is one of the few teams that Memphis could have matched up in the first round that can actually match their size and their rebounding.
Athleticism. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Boise State, 5th in the country in defensive rebounding percentage. You need that to keep Memphis off the glass. You saw Memphis against SMU. I think they ended up with almost 50 rebounds total in the game. I mean, it was just it was an absolute mess. So you have to keep them off the offensive glass if you want to have any chance of winning. And Boise State can do that. On the flip side, Boise State runs a ton of post upsets. They're very similar to Memphis in the fact that all of their scoring pretty much comes at the rim. So it's not the best of matchups for them, given how good Memphis is at the rim defending. But if Boise State can slow this game down to their snail's pace, they'll have a good shot. And the one thing about Memphis, like you kind of mentioned with the point guard issues, they're 352nd in the country in turnover percentage, while Boise State turns people over a pretty high rate.
In the field.
So I actually do like Boise State here, given the number. And I do think we may be able to get a 3.5 come Thursday. So I'm ultimately probably going to be playing the Broncos here in this. Doesn't give me a good feeling, but I do think there is some value on Boise State.
Yeah, I think I'd end up playing Boise State there too. I don't really like them as a favorite because they're awful at the free throw line. I think this game also sets up as an under. It's one of my favorite first round unders. The point, we have point guard issues on both teams. Both teams are just like really long and switchable, and they can really take away everything the other team wants to do, creating mismatches in the half court on the offensive end. two really good defensive teams, just long everywhere. And, when you look, it's like, okay, Memphis creates a lot of turnovers. Boise State has, some point guard questions. But Boise State, incredible in transition defense. That's huge here. Keep Memphis in the half court, make them score the half court where you're really strong. I think Memphis will struggle to score. The other thing, Memphis, with their way that they pressure, is they foul a lot. But Boise State, one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. Memphis also struggles at the line. So even though I think that there could be some pressure here and turnovers and foul shots, the transition defense, the bad free throw shooting, I think, kind of overcomes that. In this game is played to just a defensive battle. I think both defenses have advantages in the half court. So I kind of like the under. I agree, though. If you get 3.5, I think it's Boise going through. And both teams are athletic enough to hang with Gonzaga. I think Memphis is the more dangerous team, given their uber athleticism, and they'll just make that game like just helter-skelter. I think Gonzaga ultimately will prevail, but Memphis will give them a test. Might have some value depending on the line.
Yeah, I'm very
down to the next
line. I'm very interested to see what that line is if Memphis gets past this game.
Yep. UConn and New Mexico State in the 5-12 game. This is everyone loves a 12 seed upsetting a 5. Is UConn vulnerable here? What do you see?
Maybe because of their offense, not because of their defense. I mean, they are the Huskies are incredibly efficient defensively. Number 1 team in the country in terms of the quality of 3-point looks they allow. That's terrible news for New Mexico State, who takes threes at a really high rate and is only making around 33% for the season. UConn also number 1 team in college basketball in offensive rebounding percentage. That's, a lot of second chance points is how they've been somewhat efficient offensively. New Mexico State is a pretty decent defensive rebounding team, but overall they didn't play an overly difficult non-conference schedule. The one team they did play, which I found interesting, was Washington State, who was top 30 in offensive rebounding percentage. Washington State grabbed 18 offensive rebounds in that game. So if I'm New Mexico State, I am very, very worried about UConn just dominating the Aggies on the glass. But again, the Huskies have not been a very efficient offense. Given the number, I do think if it drops a little bit to -6, maybe -5.5, maybe there's some love in the market for New Mexico State. There already has been, because they opened at 7 and they're down to 6.5. I think there's a potential to play UConn here. They're definitely vulnerable because of how inefficient their offense has been. But again, it's a really good matchup for them defensively. So if given a better number, I think I might end up playing the Huskies.
Yeah, I actually don't love the matchup for New Mexico State. They always tend to be a trendy underdog pick, but I think that they just have Teddy Allen, Teddy buckets for New Mexico State. He can get buckets and make tough shots. He was at West Virginia, then Nebraska, now New Mexico State. But I think Connecticut has a lot of length to throw at him that can really bother him and take him out of this game. Neither team wants to play super fast. I think that, New Mexico State, I think their defense is better than their offense. The UConn offense has some issues at times. Their defense is incredible. I think this is played in a complete half court, and I really like the under here as well. The West is where I like most of my unders, for what it's worth. But I think UConn advances. I don't think that I'm not going to have New Mexico State as a trendy pick. You have UConn advancing in your bracket as well?
Yep. Yeah, this is I think there's 3 of the 5-12 matchups I think are pretty much set that the 5 is going through, and then there's one that I think is pretty up in the air right now.
Don't jinx Iowa, please.
Hey, I mean,
all right,
yeah.
Are you confident in your Hawkeyes, by the way?
Yes, but the number's too high. I'll just say that in the first round. But I do think that Richmond doesn't have an answer for Keegan Murray. So even there,
Richmond might not have the legs either.
Yeah, but I really worry. What happened with Illinois last year and the hangover from winning the first Big Ten tournament in a long time. I really worry about that with Iowa. But if like, for example, if they have to play South Dakota State in the second round, that scares me a lot.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the UConn. New Mexico State will take on the winner. These games are in Buffalo, of Arkansas and Vermont. Or maybe Vermont gets some crowd down there. Make the drive, 5-6 hours from depending on where you are in the state. I think they'll have a decent contingent there. Vermont led, just absolutely torched the American East. They lost one game by one when they were missing 2 starters, and then Hartford made like 1 billion threes in overtime. Other than that, they just rolled through the league. They won every game in their conference title, all 3 games by more than 30 points. I think 39, 34, and 39. They're dangerous. Arkansas, obviously, a dangerous team as well. Are the Hogs, Collins Hogs, should have had them stop on for this episode. Are they in danger of an upset here? This is actually one that I might pick in my bracket. I might have Vermont moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. They are in, I guess you can call it trouble, vulnerable, whatever you want to call it, because this is an incredibly good and efficient Vermont team. 4th most experienced team in college basketball per Ken Pom. The biggest thing in this match, they have a pretty decent matchup here against Arkansas. They're the number 1 defensive rebounding team in the country, so they should be able to keep the Hogs off the offense. That's very huge against Arkansas. They're very good defending inside the arc, 22nd in 2-point field goal percentage, and top 80 in field goal percentage at the rim. Arkansas does not shoot the ball well from behind the arc, so another positive for Vermont. Also, they should be able to slow this game down to their incredibly slow pace and force Arkansas to play them in the half court, where Vermont is top 10 in points per possession this season. They're very good in terms of their shot selection, which is they're 9th in the country. They also don't turn the ball over a whole lot. They're very efficient attacking the rim. So if this game is played in the half court and Vermont forces Arkansas to play with them at the slow pace, this is without a doubt upset alert for the Hogs. So I love Vermont at +5, +5.5. I probably wouldn't go any lower than that. If it goes lower than that, I'll probably just play it on the money line. But yeah, the Arkansas is definitely vulnerable here against a really good Vermont team.
Yeah, and Arkansas can start slow in games. That's not a great recipe for success as a favorite in the tournament. And I agree
with that, because I think Colin's been saying it forever, how Arkansas just starts down 10 every single game. You might be able to get a situation where if you play Vermont to start, at +5, +5.5, well, if they go up early, similar to what Colgate did to Arkansas last year, you could get a wonderful middle spot on Arkansas, potentially either win or, getting them a plus number for the rest of the game.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Arkansas want to crash the offensive glass. They want to force turnovers, get out and run. They want to get to the free throw line. Vermont, very good in all those. Number 1, as you said, in defensive rebounding percentage. They are top 20 in foul rate on the defensive end. And they are top 20 in the nation in turnover rate. So, yeah, look out for Vermont. Extremely dangerous. I think this game's going to go right down to the wire. Ryan Davis, he's the stud for the senior-laden team. He can play inside out, and he's shooting over 43% from 3. This team can make threes too, and Arkansas is not a great shooting team, so you might have some spurts from Vermont there. So yeah, I agree. I'm going to have Vermont. I think it's a good upset to pick here with a 13 versus 4. All right, let's move on to the bottom half of the West. Alabama will take on the winner of Rutgers and Notre Dame. We don't know. We're recording this on Tuesday night. Who that winner is going to be? Any strong thoughts on Alabama?
I mean, well, you mentioned at the top, incredibly high variance team. So they could get bounced here in the first round, or they could go to the Elite Eight. It's basically one or the other. They take a very high percentage of 3-pointers, 12th in 3-point rate, 12th in adjusted tempo. So it'll be very interesting if they have to play Notre Dame or Rutgers, 2 slower paced teams, if they are able to get up and out and transition. Very efficient offense, but again, 94th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So really, and they've kind of faded down the stretch here.
They could get to the Elite Eight here. I mean, if you're looking for a pick because we think of this bottom half as vulnerable with, and if Alabama's making their shots, like the one thing is if they win this game and then they presumably play Texas Tech, we'll talk about that game next. Texas Tech, no middle defense. You got to shoot around them, move the ball, and shoot threes and make threes. Alabama could do that. No, they just don't make threes this year, but they shoot a ton. They're a high variance team. And then they could beat Duke or Michigan State. And by the way, they already beat Gonzaga earlier this year, who they could play in the Final Four. So if you want a team, you want to get really risky. The problem is they're high variance, but when you want to win a bracket pool, you got to take some high variance moves. Have Alabama make it a run. Now they could lose in the first round easily if the threes aren't falling. But yeah, I agree. High variance team.
They're
tough. That bottom half of the bracket, I just cannot figure out what I'm going to do. I'm glad. See, for you, you're like, I really like Texas Tech. I wish I was that confident because I've been struggling.
I told you off the top, I'm pretty confident about them getting to the Elite Eight. I said I'm still kind of up in the air with them and Gonzaga. I mean, it's kind of a coin flip for me. Obviously, Gonzaga will be favored, but the one thing I'll say about this is that if Rutgers beats Notre Dame, Rutgers is terrible in transition defense. So that is huge for Alabama, who basically only plays in transition. So if they end up playing Rutgers, obviously it's all dependent on the number, but probably going to end up playing Alabama in the first round if they play the Scarlet Knights.
Texas Tech, the 3 seed, taking on Montana State, the 14 seed out of the Big Sky. I think it's a terrible matchup for Montana State. On the defensive end, they're not a great defense, but they kind of pack it in. A lot of teams just come down and they're going to get open looks from 3. Texas Tech is not a good 3-point shooting team. And Montana State gets a lot of good defensive rebounds because they're packed in. And Texas Tech likes to live on the offensive glass. So I think Montana State might be able to have some success defensively. But the problem is their offense is they want to feed the post and they want to dribble drive with their guards to create. You can't do that against the no middle. So I cannot see Montana State scoring enough, even though like this game, Texas Tech, you always can say like, oh, they could be on upset alert as a big favor because the game's going to be a crawl, low scoring. You're going to be shooting threes against them. It's your only course of offense against their excellent defense. But I would lean under here. I actually would lean Texas Tech reluctantly, but I don't like laying big numbers with them. But I think this is a tough matchup for Montana State's offense. Don't think Texas Tech is at risk of upset. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm happy to just completely pass on this one. I really don't have a good feel. But the one thing I'll say about Montana State, you mentioned their dribble drive offense. They draw a ton of fouls. I mean, they're 5th in the country.
And Texas Tech fouls.
Yep, they're 4th in the country in free throw rate, and they do hit 75% from the free throw line. And like you mentioned, Texas Tech, 232nd in free throw rate allowed. So that's basically one of the only advantages that Montana State will have offensively. But like you said, really, really bad matchup for them. The number's probably right, potentially playing under, but just a complete stay away from me.
Yeah, that's one of the things I mentioned in my article on ranking the upsets on Action Network app. I said that if it's called really tight and they're just calling fouls everywhere, that's advantage for Montana State because Texas Tech also isn't great at the line. But that's pretty much their only hope, I think, offensively. All right, moving on to the bottom pod of the West in Greenville. You have where Davidson and Duke are playing, not each other, but they're both playing there. So you would think they have a little regional advantage, especially Duke, a huge fan base. We'll start Michigan State, Davidson. Michigan State, backcourt health questions. Tyson Walker probably won't play. Hogarth's a little banged up. This is the Foster Lawyer revenge game. The ex-Michigan State product, who might be like one of their best players now if he was still on the team. I'm not a believer in this Michigan State team. They even led the Big Ten in 3-point defense and 3-point shooting, even though I don't think they take great shots. They still didn't run through the conference. Shot quality, luck box. And this team turns it over a lot. They don't force turnovers. I don't think that they can really disrupt this Davidson offense. The only thing that concerns me, does Lawyer try to do too much? I don't think he will. And then just kind of a physicality advantage inside, just Michigan State, I'm just going to throw it up and get dunks and rebounds. But I think Davidson can compete there better than some people think. I think Davidson advances. I'm going to bet them as well. You agree?
Absolutely. You mentioned the shot quality luck box. Last 16 games of the season, Michigan State 6-10 overall record, 1-15 shot quality record. Their shot selection on offense really plays to that because they're 299th in the shot selection and 334th in rim and 3-point rate, which are the 2 most valuable shots in half-court offense. So given the fact they're outside the top 200 in points per possession in both half-court and transition, it's hard for me to see how they're going to exploit Davidson, even though Davidson isn't that great of a team defensively. But Davidson is top 10 in terms of defensive rebounding percentage. So Michigan State's going to have very few second chance points. So I agree with you. I don't know how, the Spartans are really going to score effectively in this game. And on the flip side, if you haven't seen Davidson play, they are one of the best shooting teams in all of college basketball. Top 6 in both catch and shoot and off dribble 3-pointers. I mean, they finished the season over 38% from behind the arc. They play a very, very slow tempo, high frequency of their offense coming in the half court, where they're third in points per possession per shot quality, while Michigan State is outside the top 100 in half court defense. So given the fact that this is going to be played at a slow pace, where Michigan State actually loves to play a decent amount of percentage of their possessions in transition, I think that Davidson has a ton of advantages, and also the injury questions for Michigan State. I agree with you. This is probably my favorite pick of all of Friday. I love Davidson here, and we will talk about it a bit, but I also love them to beat Duke in the second round.
Yeah, Davidson, they're not going to let you get out in transition. I think that's Michigan State's best course of action for offense. But Davidson just slows the game down to a crawl, doesn't let you get in transition, which I think works in their favor here. And look, they got guys like Menenga, Brakovic, who can shoot threes, who can pull out those Michigan State bigs and kind of open up the motion offense. I think that's going to be a matchup.
Three starters over 40% from behind the arc.
Yeah, and that includes their bigs.
And Foster Loyer leads the country in free throw percentage.
Yeah. I mean, Lawyer's at 45%. Brakovic is at 40%. Lee is at 38%. And it's a guy who hit 46% last year, 38% the year before. Jones at 43%. Menenga at 44%. Huffman at 38%. This team can shoot. I think they get it done.
And that's really what you want in a bracket like this, or at least in the NCAA tournament. You want teams that can get hot really easily shooting the ball and just ride that wave all the way through the tournament. So Davidson's one of those teams that I'll be picking to go to the Sweet 16. And who knows, maybe I'll stare at Texas Tech a little bit longer and have Davidson in the Elite Eight. Probably not, but
hey, why not? It's madness. Yeah. Duke Fullerton, final game of the West. Duke 18.5 point favorite here against Fullerton, coming all the way across the country after winning the Big West, taking on Duke, who kind of slid down the stretch. I'm fading Duke in this tournament, not here. Actually might play Duke. I think it's a terrible matchup for Fullerton. They want to feed it inside to Anasicki. They want to get to the rim. You just can't do those things against Duke and Mark Williams. The other side, Duke has the size advantage with their guards. Duke doesn't turn it over. Fullerton wants to turn it over. Fullerton wants to get to the line. Duke doesn't foul. Just matchup advantages all over. It feels like a game where like everyone's writing off Duke and they get to play like a really inferior opponent in front of their home crowd. And I think that they take advantage and like just run it up, take out some frustrations. Hopefully win by like 50. And then we can get everyone's like, oh, Duke's back. And then we can fade them in the next round.
That'd be great.
So I think their defense has major issues, but I don't think Fullerton can expose that here. Fullerton also not like a 3-point reliant team. They do have a couple capable shooters, but they want to work in the post. They want to get to the rim. Just not going to work against Duke. So, yeah, I think the Blue Devils win rather easily. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It's just a complete pass for me. What I will say about Duke, the Titans aren't going to exploit them here, but Duke right now cannot turn anybody over, 318th in turnover percentage. They can't stop anybody in transition, 183rd in points per possession allowed. And they are horrible at defending three-pointers outside the top 200 against both catch and shoot and off dribble. So the next round against Davidson, that's a huge problem because those are three things that Davidson does.
Motion offenses. Duke
motion offenses. Last 4 games of the season from Duke, they allowed over 1.1 points per possession to North Carolina, Syracuse without Buddy Boeheim, Miami, and Virginia Tech. So what do you think Davidson or even potentially Texas Tech is going to do? Like, this is a really, really bad defense right now. But again, like you mentioned, Cal State Fullerton just doesn't take a high number of threes, doesn't have the size, really just can't really compete here with Duke. So it's a pass for me. I mean, like any game in this tournament, I'll be potentially looking to play something live, but I don't really have a good feel for this one. So I'll be passing.
All right. Then before we get you out of here, you can share if you want. If you've decided already, I will wait because I'm going to be doing the Midwest and East. But I might have your and I's team in the Final Four. But they're my 2 futures. I added Iowa 50 and 70 to 1 2 weeks ago. I'm glad I did when I did.
And I joined you. I saw you put that in there, and I was like, I haven't looked at the futures in a while. I didn't realize they were 50 to 1, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a pretty good price right now for my Hawks. So
yeah, I think it's a team that's in the top 10 right now. Give me your Final Four and your national championship if you want. If you haven't decided yet, then you haven't decided.
I've pretty much decided. I got Texas Tech coming out of the West, I have your Kentucky Wildcats coming out of the East. I have the Arizona Wildcats coming out of the South region. And then I have my Iowa Hawkeyes coming out of the Midwest. And ultimately, I have your Kentucky Wildcats playing the Arizona Wildcats in the final. And unfortunately, I have the Arizona Wildcats cutting down the nets. Yeah, I know.
All right. Good stuff, BJ. We will be back again for episodes next week. You will be back. We have an episode after this covering the East and the Midwest with Matt Cox and Kai McEwen. Thanks for joining me, BJ. Thanks to Jim Root for joining me as well. Thanks to all of you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Good luck on your brackets. Good luck on your wagers. Enjoy the madness. And by the way, make sure you check out Big Bets on Campus Live, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, every day of the tournament this upcoming weekend with myself and the guys from the 3-Man Weave and Big Bets on Campus, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, review, really helps us out. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck this weekend and enjoy. Cheers.